Welcome, everyone. My name is TJ Willits with Veolia Water Technologies, and I'd like to welcome you to this Veolia Water Tech Talk entitled Low Energy Pharma Water for Zero Emission Life Science Facilities. Just some housekeeping items before we get to the technical portion of the presentation. Everyone should be hearing me speak now. There's two methods to listen into the audio portion of the broadcast here. You could listen through your computer audio or your headphones. If there are any issues with that, you can feel free to toggle over to a phone call method, and it'll be like a conference call, and you can listen in through your telephone. Since there's a lot of people on today's broadcast, everyone's microphone is automatically muted, and also the webinar broadcast is being recorded. We're going to send that out to everyone a day or two after the event. So be on the lookout for that in your email box. Check your junk mail or spam folder to get that recording sent right to your email. Though everyone's microphones are muted, we really want to make this as interactive as possible. So feel free at any time throughout the broadcast. There's that question panel on the right side of your screen. Go ahead and just type that question in there. We have some time reserved at the end of the broadcast to get to as many questions as we can. So we'll try to get to all those questions that we get put in that chat box, and we'll look forward to that interactive time at the end of the broadcast. Also, in addition to today's live broadcast, we have several on-demand webinars available on our website. So if you go over to our website, veoliawatertechtalk.com, you can go and browse our various webinars on a variety of subjects related to water and wastewater. And for those that want to use this opportunity for continuing education credits, we're going to go ahead and send out a PDF participation certificate to anyone who attended the live broadcast. That'll be sent to you, again, through your email a day or two after the event, and you can go ahead and look for that as well. Something that's fun that we like to do for these, your survey and your feedback is critical. So at the end, you'll be sent to an opportunity to fill out a short survey. It's only a handful of questions. And for anyone that takes that survey, we're going to enter you into a drawing to win a $25 Amazon gift card. It's not only fun, it really helps us to shape the future of these broadcasts and what kind of technical things that you want to learn from our experts that we have here at Veolia Water Technologies. Now, a little bit about Veolia Water Technologies. Really what Veolia Water Technologies is that we have a core capabilities within three main areas related to water and wastewater treatment. That's by putting together projects of various scales. We innovate by developing, manufacturing, and installing a wide range of technologies related to water and wastewater. And of course, we have a diverse amount of services that service both the projects and equipment that we install for our customers around the globe. And in terms of the markets and industries we serve, we're here to talk mainly about pharma, but also we work in a variety of different industries as well. You can see them listed there on the screen, both industrially and municipally. Now, specifically for our pharma capabilities, we're here to talk about high purity water, clean water utilities. You can see our capabilities for that particular subject line, but also we cover water and wastewater treatment, utility water treatment, and also specialty projects such as byproduct recovery or water footprint reduction, sustainability related measures and technologies for pharmaceutical companies. Well, now we're going to transition to the technical portion of our broadcast here. I'm pleased to introduce our panelists for today. Ranj Rihau. He's been with Veolia Water Technologies for almost 30 years, and he's currently responsible for market activities related to pharma, cosmetics industry, and provides support to the Veolia Water Technology business units around the globe in respects to technical, process, commercial, and market and product knowledge. He has 30 years experience in design, proposals, contracting, engineering, and validation of water treatment systems, and he held positions such as senior project engineer, senior proposals engineer for VWT, supplying water treatment systems for the pharma and cosmetics industry worldwide. So at this time, I'm going to hand the webinar over to Ranj. Ranj, are you with us?
Hi, TJ. Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
I can, thank you.
Okay, thanks, TJ. Thanks for that introduction. Wow, there you go. Good morning to everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining this webinar. I'll go through various bits and pieces during this webinar, ultimately around ultra-pure water and pharma sustainability trends. We'll talk a little bit about the membrane-based systems to generate WFI water and the advantages of having those systems, and how a customer could transition by installing these types of systems into their either existing storage distribution systems, or if they're doing greenfield on that. And then we'll have a bit of a wrap up at the end, and there'll be some time for taking some of your questions right at the end as well. So let's get on to the sustainability trends in ultra-pure water and pharma. Really, there's the challenges that the customers, as we see it, have are threefold, really. First and foremost, any product or system we're installing in this market must be compliant and have complete with some sort of suitable validation pack. And we make sure in any of the products and the solutions we supply that they are designed in terms of compliance with the international regulations, so things like the ISPE, GAMP, CGMP, ASME BPE, and then the water quality is in line with things like the USP, European Pharma, Japanese Pharma being the big three. So we ensure that those guidelines and water qualities are taken care of. So quantity and quality is always first and foremost for any company, backed up by the compliance and validation documents to go with that. So any system or product that's applied has to come complete with a validation pack, which shows you and dictates the design and the testing of that equipment and system has been verified before the water goes into the product. And then secondly, we come on to dependability and risk management. Obviously, the product that any pharmaceutical manufacturer is making, the product has a value, and that value ultimately provides medicinal advantages for our customers in terms of curing or making any ailments or things like that comfortable with some medication ongoing. So the product has a value, and it has also a profitable value for those pharmaceutical companies. So risk to product and to mitigate that risk is first and foremost. And the way we can do that is by having standardization program in terms of the packages we supply. Repeatability reduces risk of that product failing on site. Making sure that where those products are manufactured are done to a certain standard, maybe an ISO standard, in terms of how that production site works. And then the story doesn't end there. When the product or solution is installed on site, commissioned, handed over, and PQ has been done by the customer and it goes into the product, then it's looking after that product over its life cycle. So for instance, for 10 years, you've got to look at maintenance, servicing. So we look at that from a preventative and predictive maintenance point of view. And the whole point is to mitigate any risk to production through those maintenance schedules and programs that we provide for those products and solutions on the installations on site. And finally, the sort of theme of the moment for any industry, not just pharma, but it is prevalent in pharma as well, is sustainability. Looking at decarbonizing, looking at your green credentials, and all of those things in terms of reducing those things. So we have included in some of our solutions some recovery and reuse systems, and we'll talk a few of those as we go through this presentation, looking at how we can reduce the water footprint and look at how we can do some energy saving in the system, all to help with the customers' targets for their sustainability targets over the coming years on that basis. So those are the three main challenges that any pharmaceutical company has, and we'll talk about how we can attack those as we go through this presentation. So water in pharma manufacturing, it is the most commonly used raw material. It's made on every manufacturing site, and without the water, you cannot produce purified water products or WFI products, or as we call them, parenteral or non-parenteral products on site without the right water quality. And it's, as I say, it's the only ingredient that's actually made on the particular site. And the water is classified by most companies as part of its critical utilities. It is critical utility in order to manufacture their products on those manufacturing sites. So the key is really the assurance of supply and making sure it's sort of regulatory compliances. These are the key drivers for this market. And also, as I said before, talking about continuous investment in service, so that preventative and predictive maintenance over its life cycle is very important. You've got to make sure that the system is running efficiently and that you mitigate against any breakdowns that may cause loss of production. So the importance of high purity water is paramount in this industry. Low endotoxin waters, or WFI quality water, is used in every aspect of manufacturing, especially in biotech industry, and for things like injectables and for vaccines. And the consumption of these is quite high. They're used for cleaning before and after batches. They're used in the product themselves, and also used through the testing side of the system as well. And as we say on the right-hand side there, water consumption for these sort of manufacturing sites requires between 10 to 100 times more water during production compared to small molecular drugs. And also the quality has to be maintained no matter what the volume you're using. So quality is important because the products are sensitive in nature to the changes in that product quality. So we must maintain that quality in terms of meeting those USP or European Pharmacopoeia specs for purified or WFI water. Here's a graph that we found that's been published, looking at various manufacturers around the world and their targets for emission reduction and when to become 100% using renewable electricity or being green, etc. And as you can see, most of the companies there, the big top 10, top 20 companies are all there, and they all have varying degrees of targets, which get adjusted each year. So this market, what we're saying is this market is really focused in trying to achieve those targets, and we can help to achieve those targets with some of the water systems and the alternative technologies we can supply, particularly for WFI in this particular market. So if we look at distillation, which is what we're looking at in particular here, WFI, traditionally it's produced, as we say, changing the phase of water to steam. So water comes into the distillation column, it's heated up, either using steam or electricity, mainly steam these days, and then the water turns into steam into this void here. And the key of any distillation system is how you remove the water droplets in that steam and water mist. And it's those droplets that will carry over any impurities into the product. So the key really is how well the system is designed using removing those water droplets, and that can be done by the design in terms of the height and width of the columns, via demister at the top, as we see here, or some sort of centrifugal system which pulls the droplets out, and then the WFI water is condensed and then used in product. So this has been the conventional way of doing distillation and manufacturing WFI products for many, many years. And then when we look at an overall compendial water system where the WFI and purified water sits, this is a typical system for a site. We look at purified water generation system at the frontier, which is fed by potable water, which has to be drinking water standards in line with the guidelines. And then we make up purified water into purified water tanks. And then from that storage tank is distributed around a distribution loop or a ring main. And at the end of the ring main is where you have your points of use. So this is the point where the water goes into production, into the product, and the customer uses that water at the right quality. And if we're talking about USP quality purified water, we're looking at 3 parameters: conductivity, TOC, and microbial. Conductivity less than 1.3 microsiemens at 25 degrees. In terms of bacteria, we're looking at less than 100 CFU per mil. And in terms of TOC, total organic carbon, we're looking at less than 500 parts per million at the point of use. And in order to achieve that and to protect the product, as I say, the product has a value, we tend to over purify at the front end here. That allows for any degradation within the storage and distribution system or any pickup to make sure that you're well within those USP standards or European standards, etc., at the point of use here. And also the design of the system has to be in line with the ISP guidelines and the controls and validation in order with GAMP to make sure that you have that consistent and robust and reliable supply of purified water at the end. The system has to be periodically sanitized to mitigate against any microbial growth We'll talk about the generation system a little bit later. It's generally hot water sanitized. For the storage and distribution, there's a couple of options. This one's showing ozonation. So you ozonate the main tank and use an ozone UV destruct to remove the ozone before it gets to the point of use. When you want to sanitize, you turn the UV off, so the ozone now goes through the whole ring main, and you kill off any bacteria using ozone. The ozone is generated through an electrolytical system here, which actually splits the water using electricity. So there's no added chemicals into the system, which is, again, as part of the ISP guideline, it's better that we don't add in, or preferential that we don't add any chemicals into the system. We have our critical instruments on the return line to measure TOC conductivity, and we have a sample valve on the return hygiene sample valve to take away and do your microbial testing on that basis. So typical purified water system. The alternative to ozone sanitization is hot water sanitization. So we raise the temperature of the water to above 80 degrees. You hold it for an hour and then cool the system down. And you do these as frequently as required, as per the PQ may dictate, whether you do it once a week or every bi-weekly. It's all down to your PQ testing and when you set your alert and alarm levels for the critical parameters within that loop. Typically from that loop, you may have an application for clean steam. So the purified water feeds a clean steam generator. Again, you're changing the phase from water to steam, and that steam is used in things like autoclaves or washers that may be required on a manufacturing site. And then finally, we come to the WFI system. Here you have a distillation unit, as we talked before. It heats the water up, changes its phase into water, and in that water you have to remove any prevailing droplets as they carry the impurities, and then that water is condensed and then feeds into your WFI tank, normally above 80 degrees. And in that case, the distribution loop here traditionally runs hot, so it'll be running above 80 degrees. And according to the ISP guidelines, any system that is running continuously above 65 degrees is considered to be self-sanitizing, so you don't need any additional sanitization from this loop. The only thing you have in here is a heat exchanger, which takes care of any temperature losses within the system to keep the system above 80 degrees. Like the purified water system, we have our critical instruments on the return line. One thing of note, and we'll show it on one of the slides, is that the water for injection treated water quality changes from purified water. The conductivity and the TOC remain the same, but what changes is that the bacterial requirements are much tighter. We're looking at less than 10 CFU per 100 mil. And then we have a fourth parameter, which is endotoxins. We're looking at removing to less than 0.25 EU per mil. So it's much tighter in terms of microbial for here, which you would expect for things that are going to go directly into your bloodstream or parenteral products. So just to give you a pictorial representation of that type of system, to produce WFI water, you would look at having some sort of generation system, possibly a storage system that feeds into the WFI unit, and then the WFI unit produces WFI water for the WFI tank, and then the distribution loop. Those would be probably the 5 stages you're looking at. Sometimes the purified water system, if the customer just has WFI side, could feed the still directly, so you don't need this part of the system. But for the moment, let's just consider the system as we see it there as part of this presentation as we go forward. Now, distillation as it stands, hot distillation. As we said, the majority, most systems around the world produce distillation by heat and the changing of phase from water to steam. Obviously, this heavily relies on heat, and that heat is generally generated by steam, and the steam is generated via fossil fuels, whether it be gas, or in some older systems it could have been oil, but these days they're mostly by gas. So there's a lot of energy being used to produce WFI water. And on some sites, up to 50% of the energy on those sites could be consumed by the distillation system, making it a leading contributor to carbon emissions. I was at the ISP annual conference a few weeks ago in the US in Las Vegas, and I sat through a couple of sustainability presentations, and one manufacturer showed its top 15 high carbon emissions on it, and I think WFI was either 3rd or 4th on that list. The top 1 or 2 were based around HVAC, which is normal. But even I was surprised to see WFI quite up high on their list. So it clearly is an area where we can relatively easily look at reducing that carbon footprint. So the alternative to distillation and membrane-based high purity water production. Let's have a look how we can do this. This is the definition from the USP in terms of what is water for injection. It's the purest grade of bulk water monographed by the Pharma and will be expected to be used for manufacturing of parenteral, some ophthalmic and inhalation products, and for finishing steps of parenteral grade active pharmaceutical ingredients, API. So that's the definition of this water as per the USP. And one of the things that changed, and that's allowing us to use membrane systems, because as you may remember, I mean, USP had relaxed its method for producing WFI water, that we could use membrane-based systems, and they relaxed that for many years ago. The Japanese pharmacopoeia had done that as well, but the European pharmacopoeia still required manufacturers to use the distillation method. So what happened was generally that everybody around the world, if they wanted to sell a drug globally, including into Europe, the default was always to go down the distillation unit because they covered it for every market. But back in April 2017, the European Pharmacopoeia changed its monograph to allow membrane-based systems for WFI systems, and the definition came along with that they will allow the generation for WFI water by distillation or by a purification process that is equivalent to distillation, such as RO, reverse osmosis, coupled with an appropriate secondary membrane system. They were looking at a twin-based membrane system to do that. So just to recap on the treated water qualities as set out by the various standards that we have to meet. If I just talk about the USP in this particular case, so less than 1.3 microsiemens at 25 degrees, a tighter bacterial spec than purified water, so 10 CFU, less than 10 CFU per 100 mil. TOC remains the same at less than 500 parts per billion. And as I say, it's the fourth parameter, the endotoxins, which comes into play, and they're looking at less than 0.25 IU or EU per mil in terms of that. So how do we do it? Well, some of you may or may not seen our Orion product. So the Orion product is predominantly a generation system. So it's based around softening RO-EDI. By the addition of a UF on the back end of the EDI, we can produce WFI quality water. So we have a twin membrane system there with the RO and the UF membranes. And this particular product has been around for 20 years. We're on the Mark III version of it, of its iteration. And the Mark III, from its predecessors, you know, we can save up to 30% on the CO2 release during its operation with some more efficient way we run the unit. The water footprint, and we'll talk about some water saving innovations we have within this product in a few slides. We can save up to 40% of recovered water. In terms of the materials of construction, 99% of them are recyclable. And in terms of chemical usage as well, we use minimal chemicals in terms of this system. So it really is a system where we've tightened up on those environmental requirements. But at the same time, we are still compliant. We still provide a full validation pack with it, including the FAT at the factory. We provide service contracts for it, for its preventative and predictive maintenance over its life cycle. And as you can see there, we have some sustainability features for the system as well. And one of the things to remember that is, if you remember from the European Pharmacopoeia, they used to have something called highly purified water spec. Now, the highly purified water spec was identical to WFI, but it couldn't be used in parenteral drugs. But in some cases, for making things like implants or hip replacement joints and things like that, that water was used. So we've been producing highly purified water with RO, EDI, and UF for 20 years. And so the product hasn't changed. What's happened is the market has changed and come to us. So no one is being a guinea pig in terms of the product that is being supplied in this market from us to achieve the WFI quality water. Now, if we come into the sort of more detailed nitty-gritty of the system of the Orion unit, as As I say, its basis is based around softening RO-EDI. So if we look at the inlet here, we're feeding with drinking water as a minimum as per the guidelines. And there's two main things you have to remove before the water hits the RO and the EDI. One is you have to remove the hardness, and secondly is any free chlorine in the morning in the feed water. Sorry. And the way we remove the hardness is through softening. We run it through twin softeners in series. We don't run them in parallel or in duplex because that has potential for some dead legs. So we run the water continuously through both of these units. The first unit sees 100% of the hardness, and the second unit picks up any slippage that may come through that first unit. So when the first unit regenerates, the second one regenerates every third regeneration of the first unit as it sees less of a demand. And when this one is regenerating, we bypass round and the second softener takes the full load of the flow. So we don't interrupt any purified or cold WFI production into the tank. And then we have to remove the any free chlorine. We have an option here for sodium metabisulfite dosing. Some customers, and not some, quite a few customers, prefer to maybe have activated carbon filtration as pre-treatment here to remove the free chlorine. Either way, we have to have something to remove any prevailing free chlorine, as the free chlorine will attack the RO membranes and the CDI stack as well. After that, we have a 5 micron filter, and then there's some options for monitoring hardness, free chlorine, and some temperature monitoring thereafter. Some customers, again, this is preferential engineering, like to have a pre-RO UV just to protect it and protect the system against any microbial growth. It's not a necessity, it's more of an engineering preference by some of us customers, so we have it as an option up front here. The water then goes into a break tank. We tend to call this a multi-purpose tank. It's actually as I say, it is a break tank open to atmosphere. It's not a pressurized vessel, although it does have some hygienic features. It's made of stainless steel, it has dished ends, it has a spray ball, etc. into the unit. The unit also houses a heating element, be it steam or electric, for hot water sanitization. I'll come back to that a little bit later. So from the bottom of the tank, the water flows out. We have a conductivity cell at this point here. We essentially are measuring the raw water conductivity. The water then passes down to the RO, reverse osmosis high pressure pump here. So the RO pump feeds the RO units. So these two are the primary RO units in this particular schematic. And on this particular unit, we're showing what we call the S version, which has the option for a recovery RO module to be installed in the system here, which is the bottom unit you see here. So this takes the concentrate from the main RO, passes through this unit here. We recover the permeate back upstream of the RO into the tank here. The concentrate, some of it gets fed around the system here, and the rest of it goes around this pipeline all the way around and out to drain here. This pump here is a concentrate recovery pump, so this recovers the energy from the concentrate as it has quite a lot of pressure. We can reuse that pressure upstream of the RO here. So the combination of this pump, the RO feed pump and the RO concentrate pump, the electrical load on those two pumps is less than having a single bigger pump on the feed here. So again, we're looking to save energy on that aspect. Once the water passes through the RO unit here, we have another conductivity cell, and this takes care of just to make sure that the RO is operating correctly. And then there's an option for a degassing membrane. Degassing membrane is here to remove any CO2 that may come through, as this adds an additional load onto the CEDI. So it depends on your raw water analysis whether we need the degasser or not. Degasser works like a hollow fiber membrane where the water passes through one way and clean instrument air passes down the other way, and it strips out the CO2 through the membrane from the water. The water then passes into the CEDI, continuous electrode deionization unit, which removes any prevailing ions within the water from the RO unit. So the RO unit typically maybe 20 to 30 microsiemens. Obviously, we're looking to get to less than 1.3 microsiemens. So that's why we need the CEDI to polish that off in terms of conductivity at the end of the system here. So at this point here, after the CEDI, we're essentially producing purified water. And this system has been designed as you may remember at the beginning, I said we tend to over purify on the generation system. So we're looking at conductivity probably around about less than 0.2 microsiemens. In terms of microbial count, will definitely be less than 50 CFU per mil, probably nearer 20 to 30, in some cases even less than that, depending on the site and the system. In terms of TOC, again, will be less than 50, and in real cases, maybe even sort of 15 to 20 on terms of TOC. So we're really getting into low levels here. And that makes sure that at the end of the points of use, you get the right quality water consistent. We have the option for a UF membrane. So this is a polysulfo hollow fiber membrane. And this has a molecular weight cutoff of 6,000 Daltons. That takes care of any prevailing endotoxins that may be in the system after the CEDI. And so at this point here, on the outlet here, you have cold WFI water. So we have our critical instruments, temperature, conductivity, and the option to add in a TOC monitor at this point as well, before the water goes off and produces water to the purified or cold WFI tank at this point here. When that tank is at high level, the water continuously moves because we don't stop the water. We continuously make sure the water moves and is returned back to the multi-purpose tank at this point here. And during recycle, we tend to reduce the amount of water we throw down to the drain. On a typical RO system, the RO pump will induce some heat into the system. So if you're continuously recirculating, you still have to draw off some water to drain and make some fresh water up to maintain the temperature to around 20 or below 20 degrees if you can, because anything above that, it's a nice environment for microbials to grow. So if this was a 16-hour shift and an 8-hour shut-off, shall we say, or no demand, during the 16 hours, you have the recovery RO to reduce the amount of water you're throwing down the drain during service by 50%. It's a 50% recovery RO here. So you're halving the amount of water you're throwing down the drain for 16 hours a day, 365 days a year, so it all adds up. And then on recycle, we recover all the water because we've included a cooling exchanger on the line here. So that takes care and mitigates any temperature increase within the recirculation phase, which may be running for about 8 hours a day. So again, 8 hours a day, 365 days a year, you're throwing less water down the drain on the recycle phase and also during service with the recovery RO. So those are our two main energy saving devices or water footprint reducing devices. The other thing we do is conventionally during recycle, you would run 100% of the flow. So if this was a 4 meter cubed an hour system, you would run at 4 meter cubed an hour in recirculation. We generally, when it goes in recirculation, we drop that by 50% by using a VFD on the pump here. So the flow rate reduces to about half. So again, you're saving electrical energy during that recycle phase as well, but still maintaining your velocities through the pipeline in accordance with sort of the ISP guidelines and recommendations for turbulent flow within pipelines. Now this system can be hot water sanitized, so periodically you can hot water sanitize, and as I say, there's a heating medium in here, it could be electrical or steam, generally steam for larger units. We have a temperature sensor on the bottom of the tank here, we have a temperature sensor on the outlet here, and we also have a temperature sensor on the return line here. So this heats the water up to above 80 degrees. The water flows through the whole of the system, through all the RO units, including the recovery RO, and all the pipework, including all the concentrate pipework, all the way up to this valve here, and this returns back to the tank here, and the concentrate through this three-way valve returns back into the tank as well. So we raise the temperature above 80 degrees. Those three temperature sensors I talk about will look to hit 80 degrees, and once they hit 80 degrees, we start the clock for 1 hour, and then we shut the system down after 1 hour. Now, if any of those three temperature sensors drop below 80 degrees during that heat up stage, we consider that a failed sanitization. So that's how we map and prove that the system has hot water sanitized. Now there is an option, and you see a pump here, to also hot water sanitize the pre-treatment. That's an option where we can change the vessels here from GRP plastic vessels to stainless steel 316 Ti stainless steel vessels, and then we can also hot water sanitize and mitigate any risk with the pre-treatment here again. Same thing, raised to above 80 degrees and then cool down. So that's essentially how the system works, and essentially how we have a couple of features in terms of water saving, in terms of the recovery RO, and the reduced water to discharge during recycle using the cooling exchanger on the return line here. The other thing we found was these polysulfone UF membranes came from a supplier. They supplied us with a lot of documentation, but there wasn't quite enough documentation there. So we've actively ourselves have sent these away to be tested at a laboratory in the US, where they've cut them up and destructively tested them. So we have Class 6 approval certification on those particular units, and they did all the elution tests as well at above 85 degrees to prove that there was no risk in terms of producing parenteral drugs for any leachables from those plastics. So from the picture we had before, where we had 5 stages of trying to get to WFI water using distillation method, if we go the cold WFI route using just the RO EDI storage and distribution, we come to this pictorial representation. So you have the generation system, you have the storage, and then the distribution side of system. So we've removed some of the stages, which obviously saves us things on capital cost, etc., as well as we've just talked about, energy saving in some of the things we do with these sorts of products. So in terms of removing the other parts of the equipment, we can reduce the room size. Typically, reduction in building can be 30 to 50%, depending on the size of unit, because we no longer need a distillation unit as well as its pre-treatment and some storage and distribution items. So there is a clear saving in terms of the footprint for using cold WFI as opposed to a hot distillation system. So how can we equate this into financials? So if we're looking at a 2 meter cubed an hour system, or 8.8 US gallons per minute, just looking at the capex against a membrane-based system as opposed to a distillation system, and you can see the various stages and costs, prices, or the sales prices of those various stages, from the generation system to the storage and distribution, the distillation, and the WFI storage and distribution system. And the main savings are come around here, where you don't need the distillation unit, and you don't need some of the storage and distribution separately to feed the unit. At the end of the day, when we look at the figures down here, we're looking at investment up to 50% lower capital investment on a distillation system as opposed to a cold WFI system, sorry, a hot distillation system against cold WFI system. So there's a clear saving in capex, and it depends on the types of system. On this particular system, we're talking about 50%, but there is a clear capital saving as a key takeaway from this, in terms of going down the cold WFI route as opposed to the hot distillation route. And if we come on to the utilities, it's pretty much the same story, if not better. So based on some key assumptions around the cost for electricity, water and steam, etc., working this out on 350 days a year, leaving the other days for inspections and maintenance, running 16 hours a day. Again, there are some clear savings, almost 13 times in energy reduction, depending on the costs of your utilities. So there's savings in capital cost and there's savings in utility costs. You know, and it almost begs the question of why would you not go for this sort of system? So transitioning to this type of system, we talked about cold WFI using RO EDI, making it into a WFI tank. One of the things that has to be considered is the storage and distribution system. If it's a greenfield site, and you can have 2 choices. You can have ozonation as your main sanitization method for the distribution loop, as we talked about earlier, or you can go for hot WFI in terms of your sanitization method for the distribution side. Some companies we've talked to, they're also looking at hot water sterilization on this type of system, where you take the temperature up to 121 degrees, where you have the water under pressure at 1 bar. So some companies are looking for that as well, just as a belt and braces type system. And the frequency of these, again, will depend on your QC and your sampling regimes, and your trends will dictate how often you would sanitize these systems. Now you may think that I've got an existing distillation unit and I'm running my distribution system hot. I'll still want to run it hot. So if I still want to run it hot, I ought to just stick with a distillation unit. Well, you know, you can go through the cold WFI unit here, as shown on this schematic here, add a one through heat exchanger here to make up hot WFI into the system here. So what would happen is when this tank calls for demand, water would go down the drain with a temperature sensor, steam would come on. When the water reaches 85 degrees, you switch it to fill the tank here, and then you can run your existing distribution loop. You can run it hot as you were running it on a conventional distillation system. Again, you would say, well, if I'm running hot distillation, why would I go cold WFI system? You know, in terms of energy savings, because I've still got to heat the water up. Well, if you look at it, 1 litre of water to convert to steam from 15 degrees C takes approximately 2,700 kilojoules of energy. Now, if this was a cold WFI system, we're producing water, say, at 15 degrees, and we sanitize at 85 degrees, so that's a 70 degrees Celsius. In terms of energy, for 1 litre of water from 15 to 85 degrees to heat it up on that 70 degrees delta, is just under 300 kilojoules. So 300 kilojoules against 2,700 kilojoules. Again, there is a clear saving in energy consumption and cost, utility cost, in running a hot WFI loop, even with a cold WFI membrane system generation to that system using a heat exchanger. There are clear advantages of doing it this way as well to a conventional distillation system. Just some case studies. Green Global was a company. They were looking for a state-of-the-art GMP manufacturing facility in Port Louis, and this has been operating since 2020 to manufacture their WFI system products. But they were looking to install a reliable WFI system that was sustainable and carbon neutral. So they had some green, as the name suggests, they have some green goals that had to be met as well. So the solution was a cold WFI production unit and a storage and distribution system. We provide them with an Orion 2000, so a 2 meter cubed an hour unit with some pre-treatment as well to the distribution system. And it was producing water to quantity and quality on site for WFI standards. There was also a veterinary vaccine producer. I can tell you this was in Europe. We can't disclose the name of the company. Producing animal vaccines at this particular site. And again, they were looking to reduce their carbon footprint, and the capex and opex costs were very key to these guys. So they also went down the route of cold WFI using ROEDR UF membrane system for their site as well. So they bought the Orion 9000S. So that was a 9 meter cubed an hour unit, so it's quite a large unit. Quite a lot of water is required for this particular site. And they liked what we did with the core technologies. It was fully hot water sanitizable as well on the unit, which was a advantage to them. But the clear advantage was we can obviously guarantee quantity and quality with the addition of a lower capex compared to hot distillation, and obviously lower utility running costs as well. So this was installed back in 2019 to produce cold WFI. So really, just a final little wrap up, really. So going down the cold WFI route, I mean, you have we talked about a reduced physical footprint, got reduced utility costs and energy consumption, and also a reduce on the capex as well on 3 main areas. So it's really ticking every box really for this market in terms of being a better proposition for our customers for producing WFI quality water. And it all helps with their own internal standards and targets as well that all of these companies have in terms of getting to that net zero mandates they may have, reduce the CO2, and just having a green manufacturing site for our customers with this type of technology as opposed to hot distillation. So if you're a good candidate to transition to membrane systems, there's probably a few questions that you should ask yourself about the condition of the existing system, what your future demands may be. Do you want greater demand out of your system. Obviously, the key factor is doing some calculations around energy use, how that can provide you with some benefits in terms of the operation and of the system, and also the capital costs on this. And also just look at the integrity of the system in terms of what you may have on site already and how a cold WFI could replace a distillation unit, but you maintain your storage system as well. You can do that. So it's just going through that exercise of reviewing and making sure that your QC departments are happy with it, and we can help on those sides as well in terms of the offers that we have in place for this type of product or solution for these sites. Really, the final thought really is that, you know, cold WFI is a viable option. It's available now. Companies have taken this up. We're seeing more and more inquiries for it. We're seeing, I think, one top 10 pharma company is looking to move away from distillation. They've actually said they're not going to use MED. They're going to go to DCD, or cold WFI will be their choice of WFI production. So clearly the market is shifting. It's taken a bit of a while. We know this market is very conservative and it's very risk averse. But with this sort of a process, from our point of view, the risk is minimized because we've been doing this for 20 years, producing highly purified water. These systems are hot water sanitizable. They are capital cost-wise and energy efficient compared to hot WFI. So I think that's where I come to an end. So thank you for listening to me. So I'll hand over to TJ to see if there are any questions from the audience.
Great, thanks, Ranj. Appreciate your time and sharing all that knowledge with us. We have a few questions that came in through the broadcast. Just go ahead and advance to that next screen, Ranj. You'll see on the right side of your screen, everyone, just a reminder that there is a panel that you could go ahead and enter in that question. Go ahead and do that, and if you type one in here, we'll try to get to that as well. Just to start things off, one question that came in at broadcast is talking about the process of the Orion, and the question is why would you have UV before and after the RO system? So maybe you could comment on that, Ranj.
Yeah. The UV before the RO system is as I said before, it's just a customer preference. You don't need it in terms of producing quantity and quality of water. I can quite easily sit in front of a customer, put my head on the block and say that you don't need that UV. It's just a customer preference. And the only reason they do it is they foresee that there may be some microbial buildup possibly in the softeners, or maybe the activated carbon, if you have it up front, may leach. It's just a belt and braces policeman to protect the system. You don't necessarily need it. After the EDI, if you have a UF or cold WFI, you don't have the UV. The UV after a CDI is mainly for purified water, and again, it's for historic reason. People have a preference for it. Probably half of the Orions we've sold globally for purified water have a UV on it because it's a customer preference. Again, if I was sitting in front of you selling this system, and I could still guarantee you quantity and quality without a post-treatment UV or a pre-treatment UV for purified water. It's just for belt and braces under certain circumstances. Okay.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. Another question that came in is, can you comment on the ozone generation device? What kind is it, and can you talk about the typical concentration and frequency of that process?
Yeah, the ozone generators we tend to use are electrolytical, so they have a membrane and an electrical cell, so they're using positive electrical pulses to split the water to produce ozone. And the reason we use that system is because the feed to it is purified water. So in terms of meeting the sort of ISP guidelines and sort of FDA requirements about avoiding adding chemicals into the system, so we're just basically taking the purified water, which is already approved, and splitting it and producing ozone. In terms of concentrations, you're probably looking around about 0.1, 0.2 ppm in terms of concentration into the system. That can vary on sites, but that's typically what we look to do. I mean, ozone is an excellent bacterial killing substance. It is almost 10 times as strong as, shall we say, chlorine dosing into the system, which has its own issues. And with a UV destruct within the system and the relevant ozone monitors, in place, you can control the system really well. And just from a health and safety point of view, the WFI tank that's being ozonated also has on the belt filter an ozone destruct filter, so you make sure you protect the atmosphere and the operators. And we also have an air monitor as well. A ozone monitor in the plant room, which monitors if there is any leakage within the system. It shuts down to a safe conditions and alarms as well to protect any operators. So we look at the health and safety side of it as well. So hopefully that answers the question.
No, thanks, Ranj. Another question is talking about now the pores of the UF membrane are larger than the RO. So what purpose does that have being installed downstream of the RO?
Well, the endotoxins are generally a larger molecule than bacteria. So the 6,000 Dalton cutoff is more than enough in order to remove any prevailing endotoxins. I mean, you could go RO, EDI, RO, twin membrane system, but obviously that increases the cost by a hell of a lot, and then you will have to repressurize with a pump after the CDI to feed that RO as well. So it just adds on cost and complexity to the system. The relative cost of adding the UF membrane after the EDI is quite small, and it's a 90% recovery on that UF, and the 10% that it throws down the drain, it's still clean water. We feed that back upstream of the RO into the multi-purpose tank. So we're recovering that water that would potentially go down the drain as well and put back into the system as well. So the RO takes care of pretty much all of the bacteria and endotoxins, but it's just if there's any pickup within the system, as a policeman, you add the UF on the back end as a belt and braces protection to the system.
Great. Another question that came in, it's interesting. Can you talk a little bit about maintenance and what kind of maintenance and service that these units take, or even comment? I know a lot of it might depend, but the costs related and associated for an ambient system.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we look at preventive and predictive maintenance contracts. To make sure we police the system and make sure it's running sweetly and it's sweet and efficient spot. So we may offer a contract that has, say, 4 visits a year, where 3 of them we come in and just check the health of the system, and then the 4th visit is where we may do some more maintenance in terms of changing some items out, some consumables, or some annual maintenance that maybe have to be done on those units. And then maybe every but depending on how hard the systems run and your water quality, every 3 to 5 years you may look at RO membrane change depending on how they've been running. And it could be even for the CDI stack, within the 5 years you may look at a CDI stack change. But again, it depends on how it's been running in these units. And also maybe every between 5 to 7 years you may have to change the softening resin. So over that 10-year life cycle, we can program those things in, and we can also program the maintenance schedules in with any shutdowns that the customer may have. But the idea is all of those maintenances we back up with what we call a performance quality maintenance contract, where we document everything we do. So those documents go into the customer's validation system. So when they have a on-site audit, they can show those documents and any recommendations we've made and how they've been rectified onto the system. If we say that the RO is deteriorating and we have to do a clean, that gets recorded, and you can show the inspectors of how you maintain the system over the time, and that gives the credibility that is quite a robust system in that aspect. So maintenance is key on all of this. It's a bit like having your car. When that maintenance light comes in your car, if you don't go and have it serviced regularly, at some time that's going to fail in the future, and you're not going to be a happy person on the side of a freeway when that car breaks down. So it's important to do those maintenance cycles to keep the system running and keep it sweet in its optimum efficiency. So.
And one last question, that came in, and we'll end with this one here. It's more of a philosophical question: is why is there a low uptake of membrane Wi-Fi in, I guess, in Europe or in the world now that we're even allowed to implement these types of technologies? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. We know this market is very risk averse and to change. I think it's more of a mindset in operators, and you don't want to be the first one to do it. I remember going back in 2017, early 2018, to see one of the top 5 companies on various things, and we asked them, would you consider changing to a membrane-based system for hot WFI? And that customer said, over my dead body. So I took that as a no. But about a year or so ago, we went back to the same customer, and well, they came to us to ask us to present our cold WFI solution. So the mindset has changed over time. So it takes time in this industry, and I also call it a similarity to changing from fossil fuel cars to electric cars. 5 years ago, I wouldn't consider an electric car. Next year I have to change my car, I might consider a full electric, but at a minimum, it'll be a hybrid. It's just that mindset change. At the end of the day, as I said before, we've been producing cold WFI quality water for 20 years, because we've met the highly purified water systems with this product and solution. So it's the regulations that have changed and come to us, rather than us having to design and redesign a product to meet the regulations. So there is no risk. I can sit here and say, we can provide you quantity and quality consistently over a period of time with the relevant preventative predictive maintenance contracts for WFI production from one of these units. And I think it's just a mindset change and a cultural change from customers to go this way.
Great, thanks for responding. Just a couple more slides to close out today's presentation. We want to share a technical resource with you. We developed and authored a guide. It's called the Decarbonizing the Production of Low Endotoxin Water. It's a white paper. If you want to, you could hold up your mobile phone and scan that QR code, and you'll be able to have access to that document immediately. You can leave that slide up there for a minute, Ranj. But just a reminder, we're going to close this portion of the webinar. Thank you for everyone for taking an hour out of their day to learn a little bit more about the subject matter. I'd like to thank Ranj for preparing and helping us execute this, and providing the 30+ years of experience related to pharma high purity water, and sharing with all of the people that attended today. Again, if you have any questions, my contact information will be up in the follow-up email. Feel free to respond for that. And lastly, just want to remind everyone to go ahead and take that survey at the end to be entered in that drawing for an Amazon gift card. So again, thank you all for attending. Thank you, Ranj, and I just wish everyone a wonderful day.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.